Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 188 in the book of Genesis. Today we're going to ask, can God use the bad stuff in my life? Now, we're going to start with the story of Jacob, the ending of his life. And remember, for the last 17 years of Jacob's life, he went all into Egypt. Every dollar, every person in his family, every footstep of his was spent in Egypt. But he knows that the future of Israel is not going to be ultimately in Egypt. So as I die, carry me out of here, he says, carry me back to Israel. But Joseph, as great as he is, has to ask permission and promise to come back. Why? Because he's a slave in Egypt. So let me please go up to Israel to bury my father, then I will return. That's what Joseph promises Pharaoh. So we're in Genesis chapter 50, which is the last chapter in the book of Genesis. We're actually going to flip over a little bit into the first chapter of Exodus, just for fun here today as well. And Pharaoh answered, go up, bury your father. This is 50, verse 6, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Then listen to this. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. So wait a minute. You mean to tell me they left the children behind because the trip was either too difficult or they left them as hostages? We want you back. They especially wanted Joseph back, and they wanted the people that were important Joseph to come back. They're on good terms. Egypt and Israel are on great terms at this moment in time. Israel is still being hosted and incubated, if you will, protected and grown in Egypt. Verse 9. And there went up with him chariots and horsemen. So they send the army too, which is fantastic. It is a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father for 7 days. Skip down to 12. Thus his sons did for him as he commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, then Joseph returns to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. So as big a deal as Joseph is, he still has to come back to Egypt. He's not a free man. So the burial, which is kind of fun. So after he buries his father, this is a big deal. It's kind of like a state funeral. It befits a great man like this, though Jacob was very imperfect. We've been spending, months actually describing that. I love that the army comes and he has all the pomp and the people and everybody's getting along. Now I want to fast forward 400 years, actually specifically 383 years to be precise. So this is in Exodus chapter 1. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Well, that's what the Lord wanted to do. Verse 8, 1:8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. And if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. Therefore let us set taskmasters over them, afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh's store cities, Pithom and Ramses. But here's the Lord working. Verse 12. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and with all kinds of work in the field. In all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. So when the story starts, Joseph is the only slave. Here in Exodus chapter 1, verse 14, the whole nation is made to be slaves. So the Egyptians witnessed this fruit of this 400-year incubation. About half of it as slaves, half of it as free people. But then they put the thumb on them with the shrewd dealing, taskmasters, afflictions, heavy burdens, oppressed them, ruthlessness, bitter and hard service. In short, slavery. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread abroad. So no wonder the Egyptians were in dread of them. What kind of people grow and prosper when they are so oppressed? So they have this light bulb moment that something is going on here that's above our pay grade. In this 400-year incubation, we get this divine fruitfulness into a nation of millions. So I want to pause and just think about Joseph being forgotten. We're not forgotten because we're reading the Bible here, so we remember him. I'm thinking, first of all, those who forget their history are doomed to repeat it. And so here's this guy who saves the Egyptians' bacon with his famine plan. He's totally forgotten. But then I was thinking, like with America's history, this would be, 100 years before George Washington, and thinking about some administrative genius that assisted, the early Pilgrim people. We'd probably forget him too. We have forgotten them too. So I'm going to cut the Egyptians some slack for forgetting Joseph. And without the Bible, we'd forget. Without God, we'd wither. So God is with those and can be with those in confusing and bad circumstances. So God is with those in the unpleasantries. So what happens because of slavery is eventually going to make God known in an unforgettable way. Exodus 8:10 says that you may know that there's no one like the Lord, that the earth is the Lord. So we too should hear the story and know that he is Lord. So today, if you find yourselves in circumstances that you do not prefer, entrust yourself to him like the Israelites did for as long as it takes, no matter what comes. So the bottom line question today is, can God use the bad stuff in my life? Answer is absolutely. Thanks for listening.